Thomas is on her way. Co-chair is here. Commissioner Norton, I don't see her. Commissioner Quillen. Commissioner Joyce is here electronically. Commissioner Lena Wallen. Present. Commissioner Nat White. Here. Council Member Representative David Spence.
Here.
Because of her travel status and uncertainty of being able to join, that's me too. Share me. Continue with the land acknowledgement statement. Flagstaff Open Space Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. This land is still inhabited by native descendants, Border Mountain sacred to the indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home. Item 4, approval of the June 23rd, 2025 minutes. They were in the linked packet of information. There a motion to approve?
I'll be here halfway, so I can do it.
Okay. Motion.
And
To be truthful, I haven't studied those minutes, so I.
Okay, let's just defer those to next time.
Sorry about that.
Public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission. Any subject that is not scheduled before the commission on this day. Arizona open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on an item which is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commission members may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission as staff to review a matter or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call public comment at the time the item is heard. Given that introduction, is there any public comment? Let us move ahead then to item 6, our 3 business items for today, and they're all position items. First is the regional plan review and recommendations. Robert and Rebecca talked to us about this plan, the second version of it came out last week sometime, and it's in the second round of public comment. It is, it's a good word. It is large. I'll leave it at that, and quite complex. But this is our opportunity to weigh in on the plan. Chapter 8 focuses on parks, recreation, and open space. But I found I thought I'd start there, but that was a bad idea. So I needed to go start at page 1 and go through it that way. And I worked about 8 hours on it. I'm maybe halfway through. So it is a non-trivial task, at least for me. But for those folks who have had a chance to dig in on it a little bit, I'd like to see what comments that folks have about it, if any.
I agree with you. I've been following it all along, in a broader sense and not just the open space of parks. Uh, uh, and I've put a lot of time in looking at it just from the perspective of the Open Space Commission, and I'm not done yet. So I don't think this is a decision point at this point, but I think it's a progress report. The thing that concerns me most is the absoluteness of the quote core purpose of this plan. Housing attainability, equity, and climate action. Absolute. It actually says words that say nothing else in preface. Not preface, what's the word? Not in the exact words. It says nothing else matters. None of the original plans or the Guide 2000 back in the 80s took that approach. The approach is predicated on the fact that if we lessen all restrictions that are legal and not safety oriented and things like that, we'll have more houses, more units, living spaces, and therefore the prices will go down. That's an assumption. That's not a fact at all. And in following that assumption, it seems to me we are giving up in general all kinds of what they call secondary important things. And I'll list those secondary important things. They call it complementary. But if you read it, it always comes back. Housing density is more important than anything else. Here are some of the complementary areas. Natural and cultural resources, a healthy economy, resilient public services and facilities. I mean, that should be a part of our core value, I would think. And walkable mixed use communities. And that's to me, it's always been a goal or an idea, but not something that you can address directly, like resilient public services and facilities. So, to summarize, I am really concerned that the premise is built on an assumption that may not come to be, and in the process, the community and the community development department and coast give up leverages, they give up some of the quote complementary values to try to address that. And I know this affordable housing crisis has a long, fairly, not in my term, but a fairly long history for most people. And a lot of work has gone into it. And a lot of thought has gone into it. But I don't think that our plan for the next 20 or 30 years should be so absolute that it says nothing is more important than housing attainability, equity, and climate action. Climate action is important. That's part of everybody's life. It should be, and it should be the city's life, and it should be our national life, and it should be the world's goals. I have no problem with that. But again, assuming that giving up a lot of what we consider quality of life issues, or weakening them, or making them sort of a supplementary or complementary aspect to promote density housing, basically, more types of housing. All of that is good, but consider that as the core issue and everything else is behind, is to me, taking a big chance because we don't know if it will have the effect we want. And secondly, I don't think the community as a whole sees natural and cultural resources, a healthy economy, resilient public services and facilities, and a walkable mixed-use community as kind of secondary. So that's my general, I got a lot of details, but that's my general take on that. And I was hoping it would be moderated over time. I was hoping that the public input, which I heard and took part of at the very beginning, didn't even indicate that. That prominence. They really indicated a balance. We need a balance. We need a balance. And the past two regional plans had that balance. I've got a lot more to say, but I don't want to end up repeating myself.
Peter or Molly, any comments on myself or?
Yeah, I was just gonna add in that I agree with part of what Nat's saying. I haven't gotten a chance to fully and in detail read through the whole PDF yet, as Mr. Fox mentioned, it's quite long. But I do agree that there's kind of a question mark in terms of how they, I guess, are going to approach the housing attainability and equity side of the proposal. I guess I feel like, as someone, just from an anecdotal side of things, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that any of the newly acquired housing or things like that, or special projects, are going to be truly attainable to people, because there's not a lot that we can do as a community other than, as far as I know, HOAs, to prohibit things like short-term rentals and vacation houses. So just a anecdotal thought to add, that I kind of agree with the hesitation that Mr. White has expressed.
Thank you.
I agree with what said, especially considering nowadays in terms of the house market. That's really just, I watch it really, what actually the rate and how fast they sell it. And that's really not the focus anymore for the affordable housing. The high end, yes, above 800,000, but under that, that's the one that I really concerned about the housing. And I didn't read it really carefully. I read it all really plans. And I agree with that. Because if it is, we really have to focus on housing, we really have to serve people who live here. To me, it's really just not really turn out that's the one that's really in high end. And I agree also because I know exactly the one, the regional plan previously is not focusing on anything else in terms of who people who live here and who we will serve. That's why in terms of connection of the trail, closer to wherever we could walk, and that's not in there anymore. So that's my thoughts there.
Agree with everybody. Those were the two areas in there. As they stated it, with the housing or attainability / affordability and climate action. And it seems like the complementary ones are the ones that, to me, should drive the plan, because that's the issues about what is Flagstaff, what do we want Flagstaff to be for the people here and people in the future. And so, that focus, especially when what can be done about that is relatively small, that market forces, and that's stated multiple times, that market forces drive so much of this that we can't do anything about it, but we're still focusing on it. So it seemed a little convoluted to me that way. If we can't do anything about it, let's focus on the things we can do something about.
Yeah, I agree, and there's a group of them trying to figure out ways of addressing affordability. Um, Trying to think out of the box, starting with education, but that's a little bit off the subject for us. I looked at the 3 or 4 pros policies. General statement of all of them is nice words. How is it going to be implemented? You know, where's the leverage? Where's the twist? And that may show up in the or the verbiage that I haven't gotten to yet. But provide urban parks and complementary open spaces that support livable and sustainable compact development, prioritizing underserved areas of the region. Well, to me, that might mean more small pocket parks, local pocket parks. But how, if the priority is density and put as many houses in as possible, are we going to be able to leverage that? Where's the stick, so to speak? I was at it was a city council meeting, and as awkwardly as I usually do in front of the city council, I said, we've got to worry about some of these big old trees. And because resource protection is also being looked at. And then a developer got up and said, yes, but those trees are in the way of me putting in 3 more units. And there was a particular developer who had a plan where there were trees in it. So what could I say? Or what could anybody say? If density was the priority. So again, policy pros 1. How would this be implemented and not get priced into the cost of the development, which is what everything is trying to do, is lower the cost of development. The pros 2, plan and design regional parks that support larger public events, sustainable, and support diverse recreational opportunities with the same parks. Again, how would this be implemented, and how does this policy, how is it compatible with the that's the word they use, non-negotiable core value of housing density? Where does that come in? How do we do that? The pros 3 is something we can do. Take opportunities of buildings and other things and repurpose them. And that's something that could make sense unless a developer said this would be much better used if we put multiple apartments in it and higher density. The pros 4, policy 4, support and incentivize public access points and trail hubs for passive and active recreation events through interagency coordination and local trail partnerships. That's a great statement. In fact, all of these are great pros policies. But as I say, this is a good policy, but implementation. Example, we could add 2 more living units if we use this potential access to the forest, for example. And in fact, we ran into that early on with the Foots, but for a different reason. And that was the value of trails hadn't become part of the culture, and therefore houses near where a trail access could be owners said, no, we don't want a lot of people coming through here all the time. That is now flipped, where trail access is, according to the realtors, a positive for selling houses. But how do we implement all these great ideas and plans if the non-negotiable core is build as many houses or units, living units, I should say, as we can? So,
I just wanted to point out that Commissioner Knapp is speaking about the goals and the policies. He's reading from the goals and the policies, which have actually now been moved. So they were in chapter 8 with the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space chapter. That's the main chapter that represents open space and the approach to vision. And they have now been moved to chapter 3. So those are the policies that Nat just read through. And those are the ones that specifically represent open space. You just need anything in the plan, how to pull that up.
I could go on very quickly on the open space policies. That's okay. One is incorporate and highlight the region's own landscape and vistas and create visually interesting facilities through architecture, public art, and landscape designs in trails, parks, and open spaces. That statement seems to conflate open space with facilities, etc., all other things that aren't necessarily in open spaces or considered to be in open spaces.
Which one are you reading?
This is OS1.
Okay.
So my question there is, what is the definition of open space? Is it a place where we can put facilities and public art and landscape design and architecture, all of those things? I don't know. It's confusing, and if I were a developer and came in and the city was asking me, can you provide some open space, because I can't demand it, this definition to the developer would be, oh yeah, we could put our Ramada in there, we could do this, we could do that. And I know there's been work on trying to redefine open space in the code sections over the last few years. And there's a lot of new definitions. Even when I read that, it doesn't seem to be clear separation. So that's one. And two, focus on purchase and management of regional preserves and connect our open spaces on protecting cultural or significant natural resources while allowing for concentrated development in areas that support housing supply and climate action. This basically limits the definition and function of open spaces from my point of view. It subjugates it for one thing. The first part is fine. It's partial definition of what open space is all about. Connectors, protecting cultural and significant natural resources. But then, while allowing for concentrated development in areas that support housing supply and climate action. I get what they're saying, maybe, but it's all got to be interpreted by somebody that Buffalo Park, because you could develop that up there, was before Buffalo Park, that would be the priority to build on there first. And maybe preserve some open space up there.
Yes, do you mind changing over to the pros policies in chapter 3? Do you mind changing the screen over to the pros policies in chapter 3?
So we only have 2 policies in open space that are specifically open space. And I think, not now, but I think we should somehow clarify and strengthen those 2 policies. And maybe not ask for a 3rd or a 4th policy or anything like that, but just try to correct. I'll preface this all as a lot of people put a lot of work in it, sincere work, so I'm not criticizing their sincerity. I'm just raising a point from my perspective and from the perspective of the past regional plans, that there's too much absoluteness in the goals and not enough thick for the complementary area. So that's a general statement, and I don't know how Open Space Commission, little Open Space Commission, did this and change a lot of minds. But it's my concern. And
In your room. Excuse me.
sorry about my reading. Dyslexia, words come back to me upside down sometimes.
Well, I also found some of the policies, it was just there, I think it's pros 2. Sounds great. If we could scroll back just a little bit. Yeah, we want parks that can support public events and diverse recreational opportunities within the same park. Maybe we can do something with the 4th dimension of space, but that seems like, I mean, it's great, but it just seems not particularly doable. And if we're going to expand parks, that doesn't say anything about, so we can expand parks without concern with housing density. So it's, my brain was just going around in circles and all this stuff, because pros 1 and 2 seem contradictory.
Question or comment. Thanks to Rebecca and Robert, I got a tour of all of our parks and rec and all of our open spaces, and I thank you both for that orientation. And with regard to pros number 2, what comes to mind immediately is the county, Pepsi Amphitheater, all of the recreational amenities out at Fort Tudhill. So that's a combination of larger public events and recreational opportunities out there. Of course, that's county. With regard to city property, what does the city own that could support the policy number 2? Well, Continental is owned by the city. There's some ball fields there now, but the long-range plan is to develop more recreational opportunities there. And there's even the opportunity to develop a larger public event venue in that Continental open space. So Parks and Rec space, I'm not sure who owns it, but it's city owned and it's available for these 2 things. So that pros number 2, I think there's an implementable space that the city owns to do that. I think it's well worded. We're talking, what could be done in 10 or 15 years, but the city has the room to implement pros 2, I think.
I'd say that's a good point. And I don't know if I made myself clear. My complaint, except for Open Space 2, my complaint on these pros 1 through 4 and Open Space 1 and 2 is implementation and how that can happen. The ideas are great, support it. The number 2 open space policy, I think in my mind has to be reworded some way to make it more open space centric and less, well, I guess maybe
Less commercially
staff, I don't-
centric. Perhaps you're looking like for the word of like
Well-
making it less commercially centric.
Thank you for that. I was thinking more the last phrase, while allowing concentrated development in areas that support housing supply and climate action. It's as if to say, you can have open space if it can't be developed. Isn't that what that? I'm sorry to be jumping around, but that's OS two.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It makes a great statement and then follows up by saying, however,
So can I
sure,
provide a little bit of feedback and context? Thank you all for your thoughts and comments. And I think if Robert felt free to say, and he probably doesn't, so I'll say it for all of us, we've had a lot of these conversations internally. Okay, so I think we have a lot of the same thoughts that you do. And believe it or not, this is where we compromised. So I appreciate the perspectives for sure. And I think that's going to be important as the commission considers if they want to do comments to the Planning and Zoning Commission during the next few public outreach meetings and ultimately City Council. I think it will be important that you communicate those concerns to them as a group, if you all agree to that. Otherwise, you can do so individually. In terms of the implementability, you'll see at the beginning of the pros chapter that it talks about how the city is embarking on a master plan. And we have started a scope of work. We've met with our procurement team. That document will be the document that allows these things to be implemented. So if we identify important areas of open space or parks or recreation in the master plan, that gives leverage during the planning process for our coworkers in development and planning services to be able to say, well, the PROS master plan identifies this area as important for open space preservation. What can we do? And then we started back and forth. That's when they bring us in. Right now, we just don't have that, and that's why that's impossible to implement. We have an old Parks and Rec master plan that was not clear enough for us to be able to use it in that way. So our goal in creating this brand new master plan for all of our initials, the PROSNE, is that it can be used as that way to leverage for implementation of these regional plan policies and goals. That's a high that's a high bar, and we're going to work really hard to get there. But that's our plan.
What's the timeline on the pro strategic master?
Master plan. So my hope is that we can get out to procurement. We're doing a request for proposals. Hopefully we can have a vendor selected and approved through council and on board by winter, December. That means a procurement process in the fall and then negotiations and then present to council and hopefully kick off in January. And then probably a 12-month process because it's going to be very, a lot of public engagement, a lot of rounds, not necessarily like Observatory Mesa where we did like open calls or open public meetings, but it's gonna be different phases of open surveys, public meetings, focus groups, those types of things, and they'll need some time to review the draft regional plan, assuming that's up, what they're reviewing by then is it's going to the voters. We're asking them to review the housing policy, the housing plan, the carbon neutrality plan, all of these plans that are impacting the regional plan and thus our master plan. They're gonna have to have time. So I think it's gonna be a 12-month process, probably minimum.
We're talking 18
Yep.
months.
Around now, yeah, 18 to 24 most likely. I'm trying to be really realistic.
Understood, these things. Do it well, then do it over.
Like that one sit on the shelf, which is why we have them. I hope that helps a little bit in context of how we plan to implement.
It does, and Bruce's question on timing is very important because we'll vote on the regional plan when?
I think they're looking now at May of 26.
And so it will go in the fourth without us having much of a plan or way of arguing against something that we have a good argument against.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. The way I've been looking at it is with our master plan coming in right after regional plan adoption, or at least around the same time, is that now we know the regional plan that we need to implement. And here's how we're gonna get it
That's very
with
good
this
point.
master plan
That's a very good point.
versus coming in ahead of the regional plan
That's
and
very,
saying, this is what we want, but it's not taking into context the most recent
That's-
regional plan.
I think, I think that's a very good point.
It is.
By accident, but I think it's a good strategy.
It's not
Right,
like,
it serves the hierarchical nature of traditional planning. The concern I have on that we want, well, I don't know about anybody else, I want enough flexibility in these kind of policies so that when we get more specific for the pros and that these don't put us in a box where we don't want to be.
That's a good point too.
So I want it both ways.
So many brilliant people at this table.
You're saying May 26th,
I think I'm there.
only 9 months,
Sorry, what was the question?
only 9 months.
A mail only special election expected for May 26th to ratify the plan. Currently, we are in stage 4. The hearing to adopt the regional plan at a special meeting, which would occur on October 9th, 2025. I guess we're actually in stage 3, right? We're in the second citizen review session. So planning and zoning meetings of August 27th, 2025, September 10th, September 24th.
Rebecca, when you say the master plan and you're going to put consultants in to kind of run the process, that what you were saying in December? Now, the master plan is pros and open space, right?
It's pros.
And pros
It's
in
open
open
key,
space.
all the things. It's
Oh, that's
for,
right, pros.
it's for our entire division, yeah.
Okay,
And I'm guessing that we'll have like a chapter for open space is how we're envisioning
Sure.
it. Now, we're not gonna prescribe it. 'Cause
Sure.
we want the vendors to be able to have some creativity in what they propose to us, but imagine like the PR, OS&E are all so different. We're gonna need to break things down a little bit
Sure.
individually.
Following Bruce's comments that the pros policy and the open space policies don't hem us in. That's something I'd like to look at. I can't do it right now and think about it. The only one offhand I could say something about is the open space policy 2, with that tagged on qualification.
And by the qualification, you mean the phrase while allowing for concentrated development,
Yes.
et cetera?
Because it just turns out that some of the most valuable open spaces could be really valuable for high density development. And I would like not an absolute statement like that, but something that's a little less prescriptive. Again, like Bruce, that's just my thoughts.
With regard to flexibility, I wanted to bring up the map that's in the plan. And so rather than, because what it says is that state law will allow us to put, like, we want to have more open space here. But they have these kind of polygons that they need for cultural resource protection, wildlife corridor protection. And then needs for regional park and open space in the gray kind of polygon. So that does allow for some flexibility where we're doing it where.
And at least it puts it on record. Yeah.
Yes. And my only comment here would be that Picture Canyon is listed as a county regional park. Picture Canyon, the color of it, is a county regional park.
Well, that's okay.
Right.
Yeah. It's incorrect. Wondering why it wasn't brown like the other ones.
Can you make a note of that,
Yes.
Sylvia? Maybe that's an easy fix for them.
Just,
Yeah, so the designated open space is the county park.
Yeah, we can work with them to get that updated.
It's anybody, I've looked at some of the maps a little bit, and there are lots of errors. I don't know. Or omissions, there are roads that aren't there. There are, Robert and I know of a right of way that's not on the Foots map. It's already been given by the HOA. It's not there, or it's the road that the HOA owns. But here's something in point of history that might have some relevance as far as implementing. And it all has to do with timing, desire, money. You know where the Game and Fish is across on Lake Mary Road, Game and Fish? Game and Fish owned 80 acres on the other side of that road. And the regional plan at that time said that area needs a regional park. Nothing happened. Game and Fish offered it to the city, but the money wasn't there. And so if you drive down Lake Mary Road and look on the opposite side of Game and Fish, you've got high density housing. My point, I think, there is historically, we've lost a lot just because of timing and money. And so even if we have plans, still might have a problem. Another example is University Heights. When you come into University Heights, all those apartments all along the Raider flag there, that was supposed to be open space. In 80, when Pat Lovin was on the council, who was a realtor, that was all let go. And then across the street where there are a lot of single family or low single family houses across the street from that, that was all set aside for school. That was all sold. And then the school over at the new University Heights, built in a very difficult place to build and more expensive than anything, replace that. So there's a lot of timing and money involved in just the reality of the whole thing. And as much as we can foresee or protect against that, I think we could end up with a better result. But, and this is talking.
Right, with the master plan, built on the framework of the regional plan, at least we have that list of things to do and stuff to buy if we do have money, rather than saying, now we're here with it.
Yeah.
And you have 20 days to spend it all or something.
Yeah.
Crazy like that.
And we are asking in our scope of work that's specifically laid out to ask as part of the master plan, they need to help us prioritize, well, first identify best practices that maybe we need to implement. Maybe we're not doing something the best way, so we're asking for that feedback. And then give us priorities and how to get in and a roadmap on how to get there. We're asking them to review our 10-year capital improvement plan. Are we setting that up the best way? Or is there something else that they're thinking of that we could do? All of that said, we will always be limited, especially by money. I think that's the reality of working for a city, but
We're agreeing.
yeah, exactly. If a developer comes to us and says, you've been bugging me for this property and I'll give it to you today for this amount, if we can't do that, but what we might be able to do instead, can we do an agreement or a purchase agreement that over 10 years we can pay? And now that we have a CIP that includes open space, we have some flexibility within that. When opportunities arise, we can reprioritize, we can reschedule projects to borrow money to take advantage of an opportunity.
Rebecca, when you mentioned asking the consultant to develop priorities for what?
For each of it, so for parks, for recreation, for open space, so what should each area be focusing on in terms of best practices and the need? So they're also gonna be doing a gap analysis. So within that gap analysis, what are we missing? And then what are those priorities?
And based on our comments back in December, the first draft of this regional plan, we would love to see the master plan for pros clearly identify those trade-offs among the different letters in pros. Because it's still missing in this new one too. It still strikes me as very siloed. And I don't see that happen in pros either.
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So my vision for the master plan is that it does address us as a division and helps us work fluidly across the division in all of the areas. And give us that high level, especially in terms of gap analysis, best practices, look at our capital plan as a whole. How are we doing at implementing these other citywide plans, or what can we do to meet the council's goals? But then also give us some specifics within each area and trying to find that happy medium.
Right.
There we get a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and
Okay.
very simplistic. I would need to see the recreation part, talking about, well, we need more regional parks. And then open space says, well, we need more open space, without them talking this way, saying, well, if we do this, then we need more if thens. And I didn't see that much in this round. Again, I don't want to put anybody out, so there's probably a lot of, I know there's a lot I missed in there, but those trade-offs didn't seem very clear in this.
I might jump in here if you don't mind. I appreciate you guys all discussing this topic. I know it's a really complicated issue. It's been in front of the commission a lot. And I appreciate where your comments are coming from, because it feels like, makes me feel a little bit like we're alone, you know, like you guys kind of recognize some of the same things that we recognize in the plan that Rebecca spoke to, as far as like the information and the policies not really being truly specific to open space, but being, more specific to these other needs, such as housing and climate change. And so, and just so you guys are clear, we did provide some comments in the revision process saying that much, as far as like providing some language that we thought was more specific and pointed to help further open space initiatives. And I looked at the plan in general as well, and in addition to our chapter, chapter 8, chapter 3, and chapter 7 might also be worth looking at. And then chapter 4 with the growth land use maps is also important as well. We had it up there on the screen just a minute ago. And one thing that's great is it does identify the need for open space south of I-40, which we said is a priority. One thing that we might want to think about as well, though, is that our plans, goals for the community are not only for a regional preserve in the southeastern quadrant of Flagstaff, but also to have complementary open space intermixed in neighborhoods. And so that's something that this plan doesn't really address. Maybe that's addressed in the master plan, I don't know. There is also some language that when I reviewed this, I found somewhat restrictive. The plan talks about significant natural resources, and then there has a definition for what a significant natural resource is. And so our open space initiatives might be restricted to significant natural resources based on the plan language. And then it also talks about working jointly and independently to identify key parcels, land priorities, based on criteria established in the regional plan. So that particular language might affect open space preservation as well. And then one thing I just want to mention, I think it's great that we're working on a master plan, but it doesn't necessarily, even though if we have like a pretty nice plan and vision for the community there, and that's led by the community, it doesn't necessarily have any legal backing either. It doesn't, I could be wrong about that, Rebecca, feel free to jump in here.
No, you're right.
But that doesn't require the city to do what's in our master plan, even though that the regional plan specifically speaks about the master plan and the development of that master plan. So we don't have any code that's specific to like preserving open space, in addition to like the foots alignments. So even if we do have a master plan, that's not that. I did also want to just mention, I really appreciate the conversation. If we're going to work on a recommendation coming from the commission, some specific recommendations on either language of the policies for the maps, like that would help me get a draft going for the commission. I really appreciate the high level discussion, but at some point, let's try to narrow down and figure out like what it is we want to try to like make a recommendation on.
That's gonna be hard for me at this point until I really go through the whole thing, other than the one I mentioned about the open space too. Rebecca, just jumping back, in regards to the consultant. I don't know whether previous consultants were hired with the preference of, or the comment that best practices for a small community in a desirable place with limited land and great resources. You know what I mean? Rather than best practices for Phoenix.
Yeah, yeah.
So that really, really get them focused in the uniqueness of Flagstaff. And I don't think sometimes that has happened, especially with some of the code-based changes that we did in the 80s, and in the 2010 time. So that,
Yeah, we can add, we're still in the drafting stage
Yeah.
for the scope of work. In fact, Robert and Amy and I are meeting tomorrow to talk through just exactly things like that.
Yeah.
So Robert, if you could remember that tomorrow, that would be great. But yeah, we can certainly write that into the scope of work. The importance of retaining the character and beauty and what is best for an area like this, not based solely on national standards or money per capita. Like those are going to be standards that pop up very easily, right? Like how many parks employees per
right,
capita
right.
or acres
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
like I think they'll look at those things and we'll see where we are. That's always interesting to do, but
Flagstaff specific, I
they
think.
understand that.
Tailored for our
Yeah.
conditions, not kind of one.
Yeah.
Do a search and replace.
That's exactly the way I described it when we were having a meeting last week, but that is not what we want. Because we know there are vendors that do that. Right? I think just including open space and events alone kind of negates the cookie cutter approach. It's not just a Parks and Rec plan. Oh, anyway.
So on following that up, is there anything that, and I'm not doing Robert, give you a little time. And is there anything the commission can do to assist in this proposal, RFP process, or?
We might have some time to bring it to you for a quick review right before we release it. We are trying to get it out, so in the next few weeks, so maybe in August, we could do a quick review. That said, where this commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission will really come in is in that public engagement process. And then as well as regular check-ins as the consultant is putting things together. They'll do quite a few, I'm sure, check-ins, even if it's staff checking in to show you, here's what we have so far. They'll absolutely. And I probably got us a little bit off topic on master plan. Let's come back to regional planning. It's already after 5 o'clock, so we'll probably want to move on.
So, yes.
On that note, yeah, I had one other thing I really wanted to mention, and that is, the planning and zoning meeting on August 27th is now considered to be a part of the regional plan retreat, and it won't be a part of the public record for the regional plan review. But that said, I think it is going to still be advantageous for the Open Space Commission to have a spokesperson for the public comment during that meeting.
Robert, I missed a lot of what you said, August, when?
Yeah, that first planning and zoning meeting is being considered a part of the regional plan retreat. So it's not going to be part of the public record. But I was thinking that having a spokesperson for that public comment period will still be important. But they'll make the having a spokesperson and comments even more important for the public hearings on September 10th and September 24th, as well as the council public hearing on October 9th.
Robert put these dates in here and that.
Yeah.
So what we really need, in addition to the commission formalizing a formal recommendation in a letter, is maybe somebody being willing to attend and speak on the commission's.
27th, which I mentioned this earlier, but I think,
That doesn't make me. Commissioner Fox.
do we have a time for a location for that 27th meeting?
Look here. Usually.
Planning and zoning usually meets at 4 p.m. that they should be done. I don't know. But they're talking about it being part of a retreat, I don't know. That could be it.
So tentatively, I'd be willing to represent the commission at that August 27 meeting. The September 10 and 24 family medical issue that I need to deal with for those. So I won't be out. I don't know. And October 9th, I just don't know, so I don't want to commit to that one. But the 27th, I would be happy to represent the commission on that. That is agreeable.
Agreeable to me.
Okay.
Molly?
Get on the calendar right now before I forget.
Molly gave a thumbs up.
No, we can't hear you
No.
on it.
Sorry about that. The microphone wasn't really working. But
No.
yes.
I don't know if we want to try to figure out who's going to represent the commission on those other dates now, or if we want to try to postpone that. But we're going to have a very tight turnaround on the commission's recommendation. Our next meeting, right, is on August 25th, and that first meeting is on August 27th.
So wanted to change the date.
Yes.
It'd be nice to have a summary meeting, so to speak, of our thoughts. And I still haven't got all my thoughts together yet. But a week earlier than the normal one would work. For me, it'd still be a Monday.
Yeah, that is the date of the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Oh,
But, I mean, that doesn't mean you couldn't do that day. But.
Alternatively, the model we used last December seemed to work quite well, where we each put in our top 3 concerns. And then we spent part of the meeting compiling those and then putting together the letters to P and Z. And I'd be willing to compile those restrooms again for the folks.
I'd be willing to send you all my notes, but there'll be a lot of them.
Okay, all right, that's what I said. Top three. I don't want core dumps. I want, your most four. You get four. Your top, what are your major concerns? My concern on these kind of comments, if we get too many, that they just tend to get lost. Like, it's too easy to ignore them when we put in too many.
Can I give you my top three and add on the other 4 or 5 underneath it? You can just look at the top three.
Yeah, I can do that. And if I don't like the top three, I'll pick the other four.
I'll give you a choice. That's fine with me, but let's set a date to have them to you.
That's great. Yeah. In 2 weeks.
What would, I think that's fine.
Before I forget to, Commissioner Mary Norton actually had some comments on the regional plan as well, so I'll share those when you guys are thinking about dates. She said in general, her comments with regard to the regional plan and the last cap is where there is an opportunity to advocate for open space neighborhoods and predetermined trails, parks, and the like with such things as prioritizing incentives, menu items for clients, etc. The city needs to do so. As a workaround, not being able to ask for such things. Continually, we see these highly desired elements pushed to the back or left out. For example, what I often see is floodplains as the only form of open space and a lack of connectivity between parcels, even when it's a master planned community. So many missed opportunities, ... Some of these issues need to be remain in the regional plan and should be considered in any code revisions that comes out of the cap.
Trying to synthesize that into my head, it's one.
Yeah, that was more than I.
Yeah, I probably didn't do the best job reading that.
Let me give you a try. She's worried that trails, open space, and other things are given second thought rather than balanced thought with the whole process of development. Is that right?
That feels like a fair summary.
And that's kind of what we were saying from the other point of view is the regional plan says, yeah, these are all second thoughts. The main thing is we got to build.
Your comment about pros too.
Yeah.
That was exactly
Yeah.
the comment we submitted in December. Exactly. That the comment was delete the second part
Oh.
of that.
I thought you were saying that's the one we submitted.
That was our
Yeah.
concern and our recommendation that second part of that statement be deleted.
So if we picked August 11th to have your comments, would that work? And then we could start drafting a letter and use that to come to a consensus at the next meeting.
Well, I think that's to help me 18. Because I will be out of town, and if I do anything with open spaces during that week, I will come home single. Married, so that would be bad.
But we could get it to you. You don't have to look at it until the 18th.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah,
looking at it on the 18th.
I'm happy to help draft that letter.
Okay.
So if you're unavailable, I can put the shell together and send it over to you.
Okay, so if you'd send them to both of us.
Okay. Now, it helps me. The purpose of this the input that's going to be put into a letter by you, Bruce, is to let Sarah, well, the powers that be, know our position on the draft plan.
Yes.
That's the envelope.
So it's the same goal that we had for the December letter.
So we can still shoot for August 11th. That might actually be very helpful for me to get like kind of a rough draft, and then you, Mr. Fox, can firm it up when you get back.
Okay, great, thank you.
And then that way we will have a draft letter on August 25th for the commission to review at that meeting. And we'll have to vote on that recommendation, and we'll have to vote on a representative for those meetings.
And then we'll have Jackie sign it, so if anything blows up, it's works for me. Now the teacher.
Oh, you want to call for public comment?
There any comment on this particular item? Aren't you, yes? Okay. Thank you. So, just to summarize for myself too, is that we will send for comments about this second version of the plan. Focus on prose topics, but not exclusively if there are other issues. And you'll send them to Roger and to me by the 11th of August. Robert will do the hard part of the compiling and give them to me, and we'll put together a draft document that we'll be able to send out as part of the meeting packet to support our decisions about it. The next meeting, which is of the Open Spaces Commission, which is August. Okay. Thank you, and thank you in advance for spending time on this, because it's a monster. Thank you. And excuse me. Next item on our agenda. Oh, also at the August 25th meeting, we'll make a decision on who from the commission will be able to represent the commission at these various meetings. Second item is the draft code, class plus cap. And I will admit, I did not get to that document. I was so focused on the plan that I was not able. I did not get to that second document. Therefore, I don't have anything to say about that, which probably is a bad thing. But
Yeah, I can start us off.
okay,
So this is another way you document that you guys can weigh in and provide recommendations on if you want. So this is the code concepts report that is supporting the land availability and suitability study and the code analysis project that I know we've had a presentation on at least once or twice before. So if the commission wants to review this plan and provide comments, we again need to do this in a pretty tight turnaround. Has to be before the August 26th council meeting. The final code recommendations related to the last cap are planned to be presented to City Council on October 26, 2025. So if we got a recommendation letter to city planners before that August date, they could take those recommendations into account when drafting that presentation for city council. So I do my best to try to review the plan here. It is a weighty document as well, not as weighty as the regional plan. But I'll do my best to provide kind of a review. And by the way, I did invite somebody for the regional plan and the code comment section report, but they couldn't make it this meeting. But we might have community development actually come and join us in our August meeting. So if you have specific questions for them, that might be able to help. But the last report is essentially a deep look on how city zoning, development, and engineering codes affect the city's ability to meet goals for affordable housing, carbon neutrality, and sustainable development. It identifies barriers and proposes scenarios for an updated city code. And it emphasizes development, feasibility, density, and sustainability standards and land use in that report. What I think it's trying to accomplish is to modernize the city code to remove rules that might block growth or to incentivize the green building and housing affordability. It supports the regional plan. It is written in a way that I think supports the housing plan and the carbon neutrality plan. And it's trying to encourage compact, walkable neighborhoods with more dense housing, where it's easier to access services from those communities. And it identifies some tools to consider natural resources and how they're accessible. So where does open space fit in? And I'm not exactly sure on this myself, but the report obviously doesn't focus on open space. It does seem to have an opportunity to maybe strengthen open space by thinking about how we might improve connectivity to natural areas when we are having a more dense development, or perhaps how we reduce sprawl to encourage infill. So I think that's a benefit of the plan, rather, reducing sprawl to encourage infill or higher density. And then along with this is the retooling of the resource protection overlay. So to preserve some trees and slopes while increasing density, and thinking about opportunities to incentivize maybe proximity to parks and trails. So those might be some angles that open space commission consider addressing. If there's any questions.
You did have a presentation of the urban issue, right?
We did. Yeah. Specifically on the last cap, not specifically on this report, though. So some thoughts about like how open space can maybe be incorporated in plans, maybe thinking about how it can be used as a planning or code tool for neighborhood access existing open space, so that we can ensure that everybody has that kind of 10-minute walking access time that the NAP standard. And then I think the RPO, the resource protection overlay, plays a sizable portion of this. So can the RPO be updated in a manner that includes a mention of integrated daily use and recreational criteria, such as like trail access, accessibility, and things of that nature? And can we update subdivision code maybe to require like greenway connections along the foots? So especially where it might be of high importance in infill or higher densities that the plan proposes. And then one of the categories of open space is complementary open space that the open space and greenways plan calls neighborhoods. So could a mention of neighborhood scale type areas like a pocket, like we have pocket parks, but then like something like a pocket open space be somehow included in an adjustment of the RPO?
I think that point is extremely important in a larger sense as these plans and in this case, building codes, excuse me, focus on increasing density. And having those neighborhoods, pocket parks, to me become even more important. So that the places are, so we have a livable, higher density areas. I've always been, anecdotal. We were in New York last weekend, it was 97 degrees and about 87% humidity. And we're walking down the street and there's this little pocket, it's half the size of this room. And benches and trees, and there's a big pickleball court complex right across the street. It was 15 degrees cooler in there and quiet. And I didn't want to leave, but I was told that I was leaving. And by the rest of the family. And so, to me, that makes it just one example of how important these are. And the literature confirms that about mindfulness, open space, having woods available. So it's not just my strange. So I mean, it's really important for us to focus specifically on that aspect of it.
And one final point was the plan does talk about incentivizing, density developments. So another idea that the commission might want to consider is like how we can give developers additional density or flexible parking, maybe with improved access or to nearby open space or trail connections. So I'm not sure exactly, if the commission wants to be involved in reviewing this. I think it does fall in line with the other things that we have been talking about. But if the commission was interested in providing some comments in this report, they certainly could do that. This bit of a tight return around. And then, of course, you guys can be involved in the public review process at City Council if you want to make. Yes.
And what's the timing again on this one?
When I talked to our city planners, they talked about the commission having a recommendation before August 26th. And then the final one would be going to the council on October 26th.
So what would be our opportunity between August 26th and October 26th?
I think the same that you're doing for the regional plan. You have to take a look at the plan, identify what recommendations you have that are specific or more general. And for us to consolidate those, we type in maybe a letter, and then for us to review that in August.
And so one would be, one approach would be two lists. One for the regional plan and another list of the top 4 with respect to the last. The same consolidation process.
Do the best we can.
Yeah, we'll do the best we can.
I think there's some parallel to the 2 documents actually. So.
Yeah, the last happened, I remember, in some ways it provides an implementation framework, regional plan, to the next step down in the planning process.
Is the staff going to provide their own recommendation? Or is it waiting for the commission? Or is it,
We have
are there 2 separate approaches?
We have had some meetings with the community planning about the last camp, and we attended the all-day meeting event, like up at Lowell goal that they had. They do have posted on this website. If you haven't had a chance to look at that. We have not provided formal comments on this.
I mean, do you intend to, or?
Yes, indeed, Joey.
I don't think it impacts the commission's decision.
I'm sorry.
I don't think it would impact the commission's decision or
I mean,
decision to provide your own. I'm not aware of an opportunity for staff to have a lot of. I mean, we're certainly talking with them and giving them our input. Before that all-day meeting that Robert mentioned, I met with the team and we talked through a lot of the scenarios that they were posing on that day. And I gave them my feedback that time on behalf of the division.
on behalf of the commission?
The division.
Division.
Pros.
I would never think to speak on behalf of the commission.
No, division commission. What I'm hearing is that the commission gives you a little bit more strength or acknowledgement of concerns. In other words, coming from the staff is one thing.
I think you guys are the voice of the public. You're the representatives of the public,
That's what
right?
I'm trying to get at.
And
Yeah.
your constituents, you guys have an idea of what the community would like to see for open space. And this report is definitely somewhat related to future open space, as far as our campus is concerned. And by using, I shouldn't use the term open space, but what I mean is like pockets of natural resources left behind after development. So there's some benefits to this report where if we're allowing additional density, that additional density could leave a larger piece of the parcel open. But there's not, for my very brief review of this, there's not specific language about how that would be accomplished.
That's right, and practice does not prove that either. History does not prove that.
Sure. So I'm looking at the length of it. It's the report is about 60 pages, and then there's 3 different appendices that support it.
Wow.
But if you guys want to look at any, potential or any piece of this, and I would say like really, the executive summary is a great thing to read through. It's only 6 pages, and that really gives you an idea of the overall objectives, and it breaks it down into the 3 different proposals of the plan, which I think is the most key information. Breaks it down into these scenarios. So it's these scenarios: scenario 1, scenario 2, and scenario 3. And this is really iterations of the report, which scenario to essentially elect to move.
Oh, I guess I read that.
Yeah, they've been talking about it a lot in the community.
I know this,
So-
I don't thought about that. Going down the right portions of it.
I guess I got confused. I thought, in the old days here, I'm talking about history, when developer build some kind of unit, how many percent of that has to be open and such? Isn't it? That's in the code in the, maybe 80s. And that's not really applied anymore?
The way it was the open space by the resource protection overlay
Society,
was supposed to help in that direction, but there was also, back in the 80s, a lot of going back and forth with the developer. There was a lot of, we'll do this if you do that, and this kind of thing. And there was a lot of negotiation back then, and there was also the early 2000, where the whole discussion of, there was a big discussion on how community development would work with developers, and kind of a quid pro way. I'm trying to think of the city manager at the time.
Dave Williams,
Huh?
that Dave?
Bill Cox.
No, this is 2000.
oh, Kevin?
Huh?
Kevin?
Kevin. And we had meetings with, I was part of it, meetings with the planning and zoning department. Of how the process could be improved, the community development and the developers. So there was more of a defined outcome. And there wasn't a lot of these halfway through the development, community development would say, but you can't do this because of this and that. So it was trying to streamline the whole thing. And in that process, there were opportunities to say to a developer, if you can set aside this much, then this would allow this much. That type of going back and forth. The perfect example of it is Cheshire, high-end housing in Cheshire. What's that development? Linwood Estates. What came out of that was almost 100 acres of open space on the side of the hill. The side of the hill was too steep to develop. Was close to being too steep to develop in a lot of places. So the trade-off was, okay, you can put all these fancy houses in this area, but protect that 100 acres, which became part of Linwood's property. So it's not good to anybody else but Linwood. But that was part of this effort to allow some flexibility in the development process, but certainty at the end.
That's the one that I'm thinking about, what that kind of negotiation and stuff could be put in writing to have it really just become that, I don't know where, because that's the advantage of it is, reducing the sprawl, that's what just mentioning, and also suggesting about the reuse the building, just like you mentioned it earlier. It's like that, the suggestion to have that happen.
This is all history, but old University Heights, there are a number of, I think, open spaces in there that were part of the development agreement back in 1970. That I don't think the city even knows are there.
No,
You do know about some of those.
there's two that I can think of off the top of my head. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple more, but
Yeah, and they're
they
very,
try to call them parks, but they're
yeah,
people's
they're
backyards.
open space. And the people are very protective of that. And it's very important. But then on the new University Heights, developed by the same guy that, I can't think of his name, that passed away, long-term developer here, that developed Linwood. Set aside open space that was totally undevelopable. It's rock outcroppings. In a sense, it works in that there are houses around it that really appreciate the rock outcroppings and not more houses on it. But it was different than what was the idea of usable open space. This is, I don't know if this is helpful talking about these things, but
Yeah, maybe I could just draw us back for a minute and one, see if there's any questions on this particular plan that I can address. Again, I invited somebody from community for next month, but I know that's going to be a very tight turnaround, and we probably need something really solid if the commission wants to make a recommendation on this particular report. If they don't, that's okay too. But just wanted to know like how I went through this.
Well, I think we're gonna follow the same model we did for the regional plan and ask folks to provide your top four. And then we'll put them together.
We want to have the same date on
Yes.
this night or August 11th. Yes. All right. Everything's due.
as I said, we do the best we can.
Yep, that's what we can do.
And then that will be an item that we'll have to vote on at our next meeting.
Yes. So the August 25th meeting is going to be busy.
Action items.
Public comment on our discussion about the draft code project? And item C, naming considerations. We had a conversation last time about trying to ensure that the naming of the open spaces areas in Flagstaff, that there's some consistency, that doesn't have to be totally consistent, but make it very clear what these areas are. And Matt, I know you looked at the history of the areas. And one comment said, no matter what we call them, they won't be managed any differently than they are now. But having names that are, make it clear what they are, I think would be, or the thought that would be valuable to have these areas be better known, raise their profile.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick if that's okay.
Yeah.
So one of my follow-up items for the commission was to ask the Indigenous Commission if they had some kind of input on this particular topic. They were not able to get on their agenda, but they did mention it in their to and from a discussion with the commission. And the commission does seem interested in providing a recommendation to this commission about naming. I was unable to attend the Indigenous Commission meeting, but I have been invited to the next commission meeting. And so it would be helpful for me to have some feedback from the commission if we are looking at providing a recommendation to rename the natural area's name. So the observatory basin natural area, which is what it's called now, right? Are we looking to rename the title of that preserve something completely different? Or do we have an indigenous type opportunity for naming some of like the trails when we implement the trail plan? And it could be both. They had some, immediate kind of feedback and wanted to learn more about the topic. And so I'm looking forward to providing a presentation to them. But okay.
Robert, I think CF online is from the Indigenous.
Oh, great. Great, and we have somebody with us. So I'll hold this for you guys.
Okay, I wrote down my thoughts, printed them out, summarized them.
You're gonna speak to these, or do we need to publish these?
What's that?
Are you gonna speak to all of this?
Yes. Um. And I will probably try not to read this verbatim, because I can't read very well anyways. But more or less summarize it. And, my suggestion is to, officially name, the reserve up on Observatory Mesa as Observatory Mesa Natural and Cultural Preserve. Follows the same wording that, Picture Canyon has. And the first point I want to make is consistency. There are only two open spaces that are actually called preserves in their formation, either through the conservation easement. All other open spaces in the city are all owned, directed, and operated by the city with no state conservation easements. So there's just two that have this quality of preserve in its formation. I think using the word preserve for Picture Canyon and for Observatory Mesa really conveys the intent of the purchase of that land and the whole process that we went through, the voting, the application and the voting and the conservation that came out of that. And just to emphasize that a little, in the whereas, it uses whereas grantee further intends as owner of the property to convey to the grantee the right to preserve and protect the conservation values of the property in perpetuity. And it also says under the rights of the grantee that we should preserve and protect conservation values of the property. Preserve is used several times throughout the whole conservation easement. As I mentioned, the word preserve kind of identifies what the management is all about. The natural areas that we have, Buffalo Park, McMillan Mesa, and others, are less restrictive than the easements that we have. For example, McMillan Mesa, if we want to put in another trail, we can do that. If we want to set up a number of benches or set aside a parking area, we could do that. If we want to do something to those natural areas that improve the natural area quality, maybe changing something so the view shed is better, we can do that. The reserves are more restrictive as far as that's concerned. The name Observatory Mesa was, as far as I could tell, was 75 years ago, showed up on USGS maps. Before that, the Observatory Mesa, the observatory was documented on the USGS map. But the first time that it was called Observatory Mesa was around 1952. The cost of the name change may not be significant at this time before more signage is developed. For one reason, big steel kiosks have cut out of the metal like Observatory Mesa, period. Not Observatory Mesa natural area or anything like that. In the maps inside there, which the one on Mars Hill Trail is starting to get worn, people putting their fingers on it. It only mentions natural area once, little letters up at the top. So with attrition, the maps will change. They don't have to be changed immediately at all. And then the counterpoints, the argument for not including preserve in the name is the cost. I just addressed that. And then the suggestion that large open spaces currently called natural areas that Bruce mentioned should all be called preserves. Um, That, as I mentioned, it lacks consistency. It kind of takes, to me, a different intent. And natural areas have been used for quite a while for these areas in the city, like Buffalo Park and Mill Mesa and the Rio de Flag area, which is different to me than the preserve. So these are 3 or 4 points for my argument to change. I did not find any record, but I didn't know exactly where to look, whether or not Picture Canyon asked the Native American Committee, the Indigenous Committee, whether they had a different name for that area or not. I don't know whether they went through that process or not, but if they went through that process and came up with preserve as its name, then I would say that the similar should go for the Observatory Mesa. So that's my point. The real sticking point to me is that preserve really tells the intent. Natural area is more flexible in my mind. So that's my point, and that's what I got to write up. And this could be a discussion that goes on. I mean, not quite as important as what we've been talking about, I think. My friend Rose.
Ms. Zoe, do you have a comment?
No, I think I generally agree that using the terminology of a preserve versus a natural area, I definitely don't have a really strong opinion on the matter because I think either way will achieve a name that is appropriate and instills the correct mindset for people who are visiting the land and the space. So I think going along with what Nat was just explaining, I see preserve as being a perfectly suitable word, and I guess keeping it consistent with the other open spaces that we have. I think that that's perfectly fine. I have nothing to contest, so to speak. So
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from other commissioners, Molly or Lena?
To me, well, I don't know, in terms of Picture Canyon, because that's so many cultural issues, that we really have to treasure. So that's why I really agree in terms of preserve. I am not really sure about the argument about Observatory Mesa and such, because to me, could be with similar position as Buffalo Park.
How do you say it's similar to Buffalo Park? Buffalo Park is owned by the city. It came from the Forest Service with no strings attached, came as an exchange for access to water on the peaks. It's been part of the cities since the early part of the 19th century. Has no external conservation easements or restrictions on it. See how they're similar to the Observatory Mesa, which we purchased from the state, which gave us rules to regulate it by and how to preserve it. So to me, they're absolutely two different things. The only thing in common is you're a Mesa and you get great views.
Yeah, I can argue with that, that's true, but isn't it when we go to the city, belong to the city, that's become, there is restriction, I agree, there is restriction, but that's, not so much value in terms of cultures and such for the native people and also for, well, basically for the natives.
So you would preserve something like Observatory Mesa Natural Preserve? Just take out the culture? Although I think all open spaces, especially with views of the mountain, has a cultural aspect to it.
I mean, there
I
is
think
a big, oh, sorry.
No, go
I
ahead,
guess,
Molly.
I guess I would chime in that, I mean, Observatory Mesa has a big question mark when it comes to a lot of people in the community who don't know what that area has been used for in the past. So there is an opportunity to do a little bit more, like with, you know, some of the signage that we intend to install, you know, as far as like interpretive signage, that can weigh in and educate community members on historically how both, you know, European settlers and indigenous communities have used the mesa. Because I mean, I don't know if some of the stories that I know are true, but there's definitely a lot of like indigenous like folklore related to the mesa, and then there's obviously everything surrounding the observatory, and then the history of logging and sheep herding and so on and so forth. I think there is opportunity there, so the word cultural can absolutely apply. That's it.
You're saying that more to explore in that way? Or Rose is,
Yeah, we have the Indigenous Commission's staff liaison, Rose, and she just raised her hand, so it might be a great. I think we also have someone from the Indigenous Commission as well, so I think might be a good chance for Rose to chime in.
Okay, Rose?
Thank you. Thank you for this time.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. I appreciate the discussion, and I have informed our commissioners and as well as some community members as to what they know about the Mesa, and what kinds of stories go with it. So I believe that there are people who would like to have some input or recommendations around this topic. And so there is that interest, and however it turns out, at least I think that they'd like to have some recommendations available. One of the ones that we've heard, as far as I know, and which I support, is probably a name that encompasses both Navajo and Hopi. I don't know, around maybe some healing properties of the mesa where medicinal herbs have been gathered, and that goes all the way up into the mountain, the sacred mountain, as well as some seasonal things that have come through with sheep herding and living in the area during the summertime, the springtime, those kinds of situations where along not just with the sheep, but not just for the herding of sheep, but also there were other reasons why people came to the area to do certain pilgrimages. And I have our Commissioner Francis here as well. She's from the Indigenous Commission. And we're both kind of just listening in on some of the information that you are discussing. And we're also going to have an agenda, someone placed on the agenda for our next meeting to at least bring forward some ideas or some suggestions, recommendations, the like. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on Molly's comment. Yeah, cultural, topics start when and go back to when. In other words, you can go back thousands of years and move up. And part of the cultural aspects of the Observatory Mesa is the pioneering aspect of it. The A1 ranch, the A1 tank up there, which dates back to the 1800s. So the cultural element of a space is broad. That's all I'm saying. And I think Molly was saying that too. And pioneer history, indigenous history, even before indigenous history, as recorded. You know, it's all part of a continuum. It started at some place and will continue into the future.
And I think sometimes cultural, we have a feeling if there's not some artifact or something physical, then, oh, it can't really be cultural, but of course that's not true. And I like Molly's comment about it. This is an opportunity to better define what the Observatory Mesa property is and why we have it.
And that can be in signage as we develop the input from the Indigenous Commission and others as far as the history of Observatory Mesa.
Also opportunity with the trails, trail naming.
Trail naming, another one.
So Robert, what do you need from us?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Commissioner Fox. I don't know if I need a whole lot, just maybe direction for the Indigenous Commission, as far as like maybe the recommendation that we're looking from them. Or if we want to let them make a recommendation to the Open Spaces Commission, and that could be something that you guys take into consideration at your next meeting, I think that would be a fine way to approach it.
Right, that second option.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll just provide them a little bit of background on August 7th. I think their next meeting is, and why we're considering the renaming. I think I've got it as far as like it's conservation easement property, and it's meant to be preserved in perpetuity, higher than or at least equivalent to recreation, I would say. And so that's why we're considering the name. So it kind of speaks that the property is supposed to be preserved in perpetuity.
Cultural aspect is that we look at cultural writ large.
And we're looking at renaming it to include maybe the word preserve. I think I heard somewhat consensus on that. But otherwise leave the rest of the name as Observatory Mesa. And so I can mention that as well. And then we can ask for what recommendations they have, if any, on that primary name. And then also the opportunity to name potentially specific trails at some point. I know we're not at that particular point, but I would like to mention that is moving forward.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Just an addendum. 1969, when I first moved into Lowell Observatory, I took a run up for the 515 until I got to the open area on Observatory Mesa and saw the peaks it's one of the most spectacular views of the peaks that you can get anywhere. And it would be a great place for an interpretive sign about the culture, the indigenous, the importance to the indigenous community of the peaks. It would bring the hairs up the back of your neck. Certain times when that sun's setting and things, it's just the most beautiful view. And I'm glad we're gonna preserve it.
Any public comment about this item? We are running over. So item 7, reports and updates. First up, Representative, Council Member Spence. Comments?
Nothing specific at this time.
Okay, thank you. I did see the white deer up at Buffalo Park. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Mary Norton isn't here. Open space management report, Robert Sylvia.
So, sure.
Just mention that we had a group of 15 youth from Iowa removing Siberian elm from turquoise. I want turquoise, not the big huge ones, but a lot. And we planted some, juniper and pinon in their place. And this morning we did the trash cleanup on McMillan Mesa. Thank you, Mike, for joining us for that. The Mountain House Recovery Group is going to volunteer every other Monday morning. So we started doing the trash cleanup this morning. We have 3 invasive weed pulls this month. Day after tomorrow on the 30th, and then next Wednesday on the 6th. Full moon hike on August 9th, which is a Saturday, 7:30 p.m. at Mars Hill. And we partner with Arizona Watchful Wildlife Experience and doing a mushroom walk on August 23rd from 9 to 11, and then again from 11:30 to 1:30. And if you want to go on that, it is limited in the number of people. So go on to volunteer.flagstaff.ac.gov to sign up for that.
Is he?
All kinds of mushrooms.
Thank you for that, and thank you for all your work in organizing and participating in these different activities. Monthly newsletter, I don't remember seeing it yet, but.
It should have been attached to your agenda.
I'm sorry?
It should have been attached to your agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
You were busy reading the regional plan.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay awake. Put that.
It's not a workable link, so we'll.
Within the agenda, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. We'll get that uploaded so that you can see it.
That usually goes directly on email, right?
No, I mean, it's on your agenda. You should be able to click on the agenda item and it'll take you to it.
Yeah.
Today, that's not working,
But
but,
you usually send it, I usually get it.
unless Sylvia sends it out.
I do not think so.
It's also on our website.
Well, maybe it's the NECA newsletter, that education.
I just send that out, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Information items to and from commissioners and staff. Not for me. Potential future agenda items, I think we have enough.
That's a lot.
I make an executive decision on that. And my understanding is that I don't need a motion to adjourn.
That's great.
Yeah, great, go home. Thank you all for your participation and current and future.
Thank you. Good job there, Bruce.
You're welcome. Thanks.
I agree. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
not really sure. I can't